I said, my name is Sasha Clark. I have actually been in my experiment for about, well, it was 2010 when I was first introduced to human design. A friend of mine is a yoga instructor now. She was a coach, life coach at the time. And she was really interested in using human design to help people with businesses. And I was running a network marketing business at the time, selling essential oils, which I still do, but it's not my full-time passion anymore. And I still use the products, love them. But she was hoping to use human design to help me with my structuring my business and other people in my downline. And I just wanted to talk to her about my relationship with my daughter, who was a teenager at the time. And she and I were like, she has a defined solar plexus and mine is completely undefined. So I was amplifying tons of energy from her and she was yelling it back at me. And then I would yell it back at her and then she'd yell it back at me. And, and so we did a lot of really cool work with Sarah, my friend, and broke a lot of patterns in those 6 months we worked together. But beyond that and learning that I was a projector and with all these open centers, I didn't really absorb a whole lot more than that because it was just a lot to do that. So I also have a background in education and psychology. I'm a homeschool teacher. Obviously, I've taught in our religious school. And then I used to do 12 years of counseling. So I have a lot of I'm a 6'2", so I have a lot of embodied experience with some of these energies. And none of this makes me an expert, but I just hope that that we can learn from each other and that some question you ask will spark some memory of mine and it'll be awesome for you. So that's all. I love that synergy that happens between homeschool moms because we know tons of random stuff about everything. So so my first couple points have to do with if you pull up your child's chart, your student's chart, one of the things we're looking for is whether or not the sacral center is defined. And if you've been in human design space for any amount of time, you know that if it's colored in or defined, then that means they're a generator or a manifesting generator. And if it's open or undefined, which it would be white, and then they're probably a projector, a manifester, or they might be a reflector, which is more rare, but they're definitely not a generator. And the reason this is important is because a lot of the tasks we go through in school require us to communicate back and forth. And so I've learned with my own, I have we're a family of 6. So my husband's a generator. I'm a projector. My oldest daughter is a generator. My middle 2 boys are both generators. And then my youngest is also a projector. And so all the people in my family that have a defined sacral center, you can really get their attention just asking them a yes or no question, like, did you eat lunch yet? And then they will stop and they'll say, no, I haven't. I'm actually really hungry, or did you notice the look on his face when you were throwing that at him or whatever? There is something activating about hearing a spoken question in yes or no format. And Karen teaches this too, because she'll teach you to do sacral sessions with generators as a coach. And you could do that with your children. We start off asking yes and no questions that they do know the answer is for sure yes. Like, what color are your eyes? What's your favorite color? Do you like I'm sorry, those were bad examples. Are your eyes blue? Is your favorite color green? Do you love pizza? And things that the answer is yes. And it could start kind of priming the pump a little bit so that then they're more favorable to answering other questions and they're kind of tuning into that sacral energy. It's really helpful if you're guiding their decision about something. But it's also important when we are doing difficult work, especially my middle boy, he's taking a lot of advanced math at his age. And so sometimes I just break down the problem into just what's the next yes or no question I could ask to help get him moving in the right direction. Because once his train gets moving, he can usually carry on to the end. But if he gets stuck in that frustration place, he can plateau really easily. And that's okay too. Then we just come back to it a different day. One time we took 3 weeks off of math in February because he was so frustrated. And frustration is a key emotional energy for generators. And when we came back to it, it was like nothing had bothered him in the first place. So he just must have needed a brain break. It's fine. The other interesting thing I find with my generators is that they really do need to exhaust their sacral energy before they can sleep well at night. So that might mean taking a walk around the neighborhood if you haven't really done a lot of PE yet throughout the day. So, and it's so funny because it used to annoy me. My husband, when they were toddlers, my husband would like wrestle with them before bed, but then they go to sleep a lot easier. But I'm like, why do you get them all riled up right before bed? Well, he's a generator too. So he's like, well, you just have that a little bit of push left in you. You might as well spend it playing with the kids. So, if their sacrocenter is undefined, then I find that my youngest, especially, like if I just ask him a yes or no question, one, I'm starting to condition his sacrocenter to answer even though he doesn't know the answer. And we don't want him to do that because then he's going to start, conditioning that sacral is something most projectors and manifestors and reflectors are working very hard to work out of as adults. So we don't want to start the conditioning process. We can just flip those questions into more open-minded or open-ended questions like today we were talking about Christopher Columbus in school, and I was just like, hey, Jonah, I wonder what you know about Christopher Columbus. And he threw out a couple of things that he had heard in a song and watched on a show. I think one of them was a Bugs Bunny show. But that's just an open-ended question. He might have said, I don't remember anything. That's also a good answer. We talk a lot about like, what do you notice? What are you observing? How are you feeling about that? What's interesting to you? That's another good question to ask my undefined child. He is also, his bedtime pattern is unique because we actually need to lay down for at least 15 minutes. Sometimes, and he's got a defined throat. So what his sacral energy ends up doing is like spilling out of his vocal cords at night. So we lay down and suddenly he's chatting my ear off for like 15 minutes. And then I finally will go, okay, I'm going to let you, like, let's do one more thing. You can say one more thing because the throat can almost mimic a motor center in the body graph because it's a manifestation center. So if I just let him keep talking, he'll never talk himself into tired. So because he's got a defined throat. Now I would eventually talk myself out. I have an undefined throat, but he's not that way. And so I eventually go, okay, let's pick what's your one more like super important thing that you have to tell me before you can close your eyes. And then he'll pick something. It's usually 3 somethings because again, he's got a defined throat. And then I go, okay, now it's time to close our eyes and shut our voice off and try to just relax. And I'll lay there with him for it's usually 2.5 minutes, literally, after he stops talking and closes his eyes and he's out. And that's my experience too as a projector. I do not have trouble sleeping anytime, any day, almost anywhere, as long as whoever's driving is safe. And so, it's not because I'm tired all the time. It's just like, it is a way for me to cope with all this extra energy that's not mine, that's flowing through my body all the time. And sometimes it's just nice to just shut, like restarting your computer is kind of what it feels like for me. So, so that's my 2 points, is making sure they're getting their sleeping needs met and then just adjusting the questions based on their sacral center. Point number 3 is about profile lines. And this is just some general tips about the profile lines. I won't read through them because you have the slides, but my biggest observation is really just like that line 1 needing a lot more of a structured, systematic approach to their education. I find that as homeschool teachers, we tend to pick a curriculum that resonates for us or that we feel like we could master the act of teaching it. For example, I've been using I love classical education. I've been using that for a long time for social studies specifically. And then it also really gives a good solid schema of math facts and science facts for them to build more information on later. I like it because I don't have to worry that we won't get there. And that's something I need to know. I need to feel prepared. But I'm finding that my second and third boy don't need as much of that solid foundation because they get the concepts, the bigger concepts easier. They're 2 4s, so they're very adept at getting the big key concepts right away. They can't always show you how they got to that answer, but they definitely can get the right answer. And that doesn't mean that they don't know the answer. It just means that they may need a little more time talking about the relationship between concepts in order to establish the process root the process down in their mind. So and when we get to question and answer, if you want to come back to the slide, we can definitely talk more about your particular profiles in your home. Point four, which I kind of alluded to, is about the throat center. Is it defined or undefined? Typically, children that have it defined need to talk during class time. Oops, got ahead of myself. And so again, just inviting them. To be honest with you, my 5-year-old, the projector, wasn't even really supposed to be at the dinner table anymore when we were doing the Christopher Columbus thing this morning. And so I thought it was really cute that, I invited him into the conversation, and he had something valuable to contribute to the conversation with that defined throat. And he's obviously listening in other places a lot more caught than taught sometimes, right? And so I find that it's really helpful to draw in the children with a defined throat will start interrupting if they don't get invited to participate in the conversation. The children with the undefined throat, so 2 of my boys are undefined, they are actually waiting they have kind of a projector sense about them, like they're waiting to be invited in to share their thoughts or their contribution to the conversation. So we want to make sure and keep that in mind. Not to say that they don't chit chat a lot or giggle and goof around, but as far as like sharing something that they're a theory they're working on or something they're not sure about, you really have to kind of draw them out. And I think before human design, I might have considered that to be shy, but it's really just this energy of the throat center that gets activated by questions if they're undefined. So, and my last point is really about the circuitry. I'm not sure how much circuitry you've gone over, but in the body graph, you can see that on the left-hand side, I have basically all of the left-facing circuits filled in that chart. These are makeup charts. I just made them up for the example here. On the right side, most of the stuff to the right. So this is what you would call the abstract or the understanding. Understanding and logical is on the left, and the sensing and more abstract is on the right. And so the logical side of the circuitry are children who tend to see patterns over time, but it's always in a past facing direction. And so then they often want to change the pattern so they don't keep repeating it for the future. And whereas the abstract sensing children are more like forward thinking, sometimes in the now, but a lot of like projecting forward into the next month or 6 months, like where, if I keep doing this, where is this going to go, And so each one of them has its own strength. I actually have interesting, I don't know if you're interested in knowing, but I think it's fascinating that I have exact, like equal sides of the pattern seeking and the abstract sensing. And so you can go through and just number the amount of gates that are more to the left and the number of gates defined in your child's chart that's more to the right. Whichever one's a little heavier, then that's kind of giving you a clue to their learning style that they may. So if they're more right-brained or sensing abstract, they will maybe need to retell some of the information in a story form. Again, my youngest is he's not my favorite, but I just happened to go through this with him recently. So I have lots of examples about him. But we were talking about some math fact and he couldn't remember it. But then I asked him to tell me a story about a time when we did that same math fact. And he was able to recall the story. And then he realized he knew the answer. And so like that storytelling or songs, he knows tons of multiplication facts just because he's memorized math fact songs. Not on purpose, but my older boys were doing it as part of their curriculum and he just was listening to it and caught on to it. So now my oldest boy is much more left brain and much more visual. And so he really, like with his language arts, we have really had to do a systematic layered approach to learning how to spell, for example. And that's just something that we're looking at getting him tested for dyslexia. He's responding so well to my adjustment in the curriculum that I don't know if it's like, I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen when we get him tested. And I'm not saying that all people that are left-brained are dyslexic, but once I change, dyslexic also need a very sequential approach to spelling. So I just don't know. I don't know. I'll just leave it there. I don't know. We'll find out. But you can just make sure that you're structuring things so that there's a little bit of review built into the lessons occasionally. A lot of curriculums are built in a circular process anyway, where you're reviewing and then taking a new skill on and then reviewing and taking a new skill on. And that's really good for left brain people. So Oh, the other thing I wanted to say about sacral center, and not the sacral center being defined or undefined before we get into individual circuitry is that, I've also found that undefined sacral children don't need worksheets. Like they don't need busy work necessarily. Once they've mastered something, it's okay to move forward and come back and review. Whereas my generators, they don't really feel like we're doing school unless I give them something like tangible, like a worksheet or something to practice what they're learning. And again, feel like that's just part of like, I need to expend a certain amount of energy to feel like I did school today. So I'm like, okay, if you don't feel like we did school, here's a worksheet. I can work with that, you know? And they're also really good. The generator's here to master stuff. So some of it's just like, I have to keep practicing so I can master that. Whereas my projector, they're here really more about systems. And so once he's kind of figured out how it all works together, we can sort of move on, you know. And there's just really no reason, again, other than to just keep it fresh by reviewing. There's really no reason to give him extra busy work unless he's super, super interested in something. So, and again, I just mean busy work for the sake of busy work. I don't mean that worksheets are always busy work. I break my homeschool curriculum into like content subjects and then skills we need to drill. So like spelling and math facts, those are things we do almost every day, whether the kids need to or not. So because it's a skill. Handwriting is also a skill. You know, some of these things you just need to do so many reps before you're going to master it. Okay, giftedness. The circuitry you're seeing on the slide now is what we call the individual circuitry. And my hunch is that a lot of homeschooling parents also have a strong, a higher amount of the individual circuitry in the chart. It usually goes right down the middle and then right kind of like the inside fold of the rounder parts of the chart. And again, you can add up and see how many gates in your chart or your child's chart are in its individual circuitry. They have a real mutative or evolutionary type effect on other people and inside themselves. The one couple gates you probably want to write down is gate 43, gate 38, and gate 39. Those three gates are called the death gates, and those three gates are the energy of those three gates are meant to protect the individual with this individual circuitry from being overly conditioned by the collective. And so what that looks like, my one son that has two of these three gates, I literally feel like I'm repeating myself to him all the time. And I've learned recently a trick to avoid having to do that because I get really frustrated with my open throat and feel unheard, and that gets me to bitterness real fast. So we've kind of learned a trick to where I will say, hey, can I interrupt your thinking for a second? I have something important I want to tell you. And again, he's a generator, so that's a yes or no question. And sometimes he'll wait and go, okay, I've stopped thinking about what I was thinking about now I can listen. And that really, really helps because he said yes, just kind of an invitation for me. That's cool. But also the first time I did that, he almost cried. He was like, wait a minute, why did you just do that? And I said, well, because I know, because he has all this individual circuitry, I didn't tell him that, but I'm like, I just know you well enough. I think half the time you're like really thinking about big, deep things that you aren't ready to like talk about yet. And so I know I'm interrupting something that you're thinking about all the time. And I just wanted to start honoring that. And he just about cried. And he's like, do you think you could tell my dad that too? Because he interrupts my thinking all the time, he said. So that's the power of human design, is being able to really see like, I don't think he's my 9-year-old. I don't think he could have articulated that he needed that from us if he'd even tried. Because how do you have language for like, I was really trying to solve the world's problems and you wanted to talk to me about my laundry and I can't stop thinking about that to listen to you because I'm almost on a breakthrough, you know, or whatever. Sometimes it's not real problems. Sometimes he's just trying to figure out how to get the boss and Mega Man or whatever, but still he's got a very like constant, again, back to that dual core processor. He has one processor working on a problem at all times. And it's a lot of busy work inside of his head, but it's there and it's a part of his giftedness. the other thing that Karen teaches about gifted children is that they will show like a proclivity in something, like whether that's languages or math, science, or something, and just that the just I just want to honor that you're homeschooling or considering homeschooling, because these kids really wouldn't feel like ever that they would fit in a public school setting. They kind of don't really feel like they fit in their families even. And I my one boy has a lot of strong individual energy. He's my oldest, and I tell him sometimes that, like, you are a little quirky, you are a little weird, but I love you exactly like this. You're totally okay to be who you are in my home. And because I don't think he always feels like people can take it, in other places. And I just want him to know that it's totally okay to let it.